What is something about yourself that sounds totally made up, but is 100% real? I never graduated high school, but I have a bachelor's degree. I was homeschooled and my mom never went through the legal steps to actually get me a real diploma, so she made one in Photoshop that was then used to get me into this podunk community college that didn't verify it. From there I got my associate's degree, which I then used to get into a decent university where I got my bachelor's. I homeschooled and didn't have a legit transcript when I applied for college. I made one on my computer. They accepted it. I was shocked. I was once sponsored by the Crunk Energy Drink Company for sailing. I imagine I was the only sailor on their list. I literally just emailed them saying that I sailed and asked if they wanted me to put stickers on my boat. They sent me a few cases of the drink, t-shirts, hats, the works. My car was known as the Crunk Mobile. That's badass. A horse threw me in the air when I was a child, but I wasn't on his back. He grabbed the skin of my back with his teeth and yeeted me. Arsehole horses. L had one bite my back and stomp on me. My mum didn't believe me till she saw the teeth marks later. I saw the former Prime Minister of Poland in his underwear. That's not how the rhyme goes. I see London. I see France. I see the Prime Minister of Poland in his underpants. I was at a store when Tony Hawk was signing autographs. I was only 10 at the time and was a huge fan. One of his early video games had just come out. The store had a couple TVs on the wall and some video games to play. Being a kid, I waited for one controller to open up and someone leave. A kid ended up leaving and I grabbed the controller and started playing and minding my own business. A couple minutes later the store wanted to grab photos of Tony playing his own video game. He came over and grabbed the second controller and began to play multiplayer with me. Probably played for 10 minutes. The bonus was it was also my 10th birthday. So I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater with Tony Hawk. I took my mother for a surprise trip to New York City. She got married to my father there in '68. The surprise was manufactured by way of telling her we were going to Australia. We live in New Zealand, so a trip to Australia is not a huge deal. It's the type of thing you could do for the weekend, and therefore she packed a bag and brought her passport. We got to the airport and said, surprise, we are going to New York, and she cried her eyes out with delight. When we arrived on our first morning, I said, okay, what do you want to do? She said, when I was last here in 1968, the Twin Towers weren't complete, so I'd like to go to the top of them. Your wish is my command. I said, and off we went to the WTC. That was the afternoon of September 10th, 2001. Suffice it to say, there was a particular poignancy when we looked out the window at around 8 AM the next morning. My dad kidnapped me and took me to Singapore for very malicious purposes. I'm sure you could imagine. I was 15 and my dad literally had fake documents and suitcases filled with random clothes. When we got there we went to a sketchy hotel, and after 15 minutes he went to the bar. A bit after that, some guy just walks in. I was confused, but he began muttering saying I was too pale and too old, and he left. I called my dad, but he didn't answer, so I climbed out through the window and went to the police. They put me on a plane home that same hour. I don't really tell people because it's a bit of a crazy story and sounds made up, hence why it's here. But yeah, holy fucking shit. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm totally fine. This was 2 years ago anyway and nothing has happened since. It's just crazy to think about. The most fucked up thing to me is that my dad did it deliberately. It wasn't like this rando dude came into the wrong room. It was strategically timed. But yeah, thanks, I'm all guxy now. Is your dad in prison now? He should be. Unfortunately not, but he's been charged with something I'm not allowed to know because I'm not 18, which is BS. And he's allowed monitored visits with my siblings and my siblings have to go bar and I get a choice. BC, I'm 17. But yeah, I sneeze when I think of sex. Every single time. My wife likes to give me shit if I just sneeze innocently. She thinks she's a riot. Now your wife gets turned in by people sneezing. Reverse card. Spent a really cool day in London with Christian Slater and his mum. His mum is adorable. Christian Slater is adorable as well. I died first and then was born. I've told this story a few times on Reddit, but I enjoy telling it, so here we go again. During the cesarean to bring me into the world, there was some major complication on my mother's end. She started bleeding internally, drowning me in the womb. When I was removed, the doctors tried to get me breathing but couldn't. I was declared dead. My mother was still unconscious, but my dad was brought in to say goodbye to me. He held me in his arms, was saying goodbye when out of nowhere I started coughing up blood and screaming as babies do. Apparently it was the weirdest moment in his life, being abjectly terrified and overwhelmed with joy that I was alive. It's my favorite story to tell, because weirdly it takes some pressures off on birthdays. I don't do well with too much attention by family/friends, but celebrating my death day doesn't bring people the same connotations. I found out my father wasn't my biological father in 10th grade biology class. We were learning about blood types and traits. I raised my hand thinking I was a smartass. Your chart isn't accurate. My dad has AB negative, and I'm O positive. My teacher said I think your mom has some explaining to do, and we all chuckled. Turned out, he was not my father. So how did that play out? I came home and laughed about it to my mom. Went to a friend's house and got home around 8 p.m. When I got home, my mom was waiting for me. My mom had a stack of pictures on the foot of my bed and told me that's your real father. Lol. So that's how I found out. I was actually okay with it. The person I thought was my father was already kind of a loser deadbeat. Turns out my dad was also a loser deadbeat. No loss, I guess. Would have been awesome if my dad would have turned out to be a decent human being. So, tragic story, not a happy ending. At least I can look back and laugh. Kind of a funny way to find out. I've been stabbed 8 times. Edit. This is a fairly new account, so I'm prepared to identify myself. Edit. I didn't get the chance to tell my story in court as they pled guilty before I was called. I was drunk and I came out the pub I was in to get some fresh air. I walked past 3 guys and one of them asked me for a cigarette. I told him I don't smoke and he became immediately aggressive. I argued with him for a while and his friends started shouting at me and threatening me. At this point he kind of disappeared behind me. One of the others showed me a knife, so I turned and walked away. I knew they were following me as was walking back to the pub. I had a bus stop on my left hand side and a building on my right. I looked up and saw the first guy walking towards me. It was fight or flight and I had nowhere to fly to, so I decided that attack was the best form of defense. I think I managed one punch before the 3 of them jumped me. They had been robbing and beating up people all over town for about 2 weeks beforehand. Please tell me it has nothing to do with your username. Kids, am I right? One of my ancestors was dumb and bought one of Napoleon's door knobs. It turns out it's fake. Door knobs were invented after Napoleon died. I'm intrigued by the fact that this is the story that your family decided to pass on from one generation to the next far enough to lose track of the relation and just refer to the subject as ancestor. I had my tongue surgically enhanced for more reach and flexibility when I was 8. Edit. I'm super jazzed by how many of us are out there. Interesting. I've never met anyone that has had their tongue clipped. Had mine done as a toddler and I guess they sort of overshot the mark because I ended up with a Gene Simmons style. Yeah, mine was bad enough that I couldn't really reach the back of my upper front teeth, so L's were a particular issue until I had it done. I lost my heel in a lawnmower accident. Jesus. Fricking Christ. That sounds very unpleasant. What happened exactly? No offense, but I think he just earned your username. Lol. Edit. Here's a story. I was 4 at the time, and I won't say who exactly did it, but he was mowing, and it was a riding mower and the hitch on the back where you can hook a little trailer. I loved to stand on that part and ride. Well, this time I saw a frog in the grass, and being the 4-year-old I was at the time, I jumped off the mower and onto the grass and put my hands over the frog to catch it, and he didn't realize I had jumped off, and he backed up. Hey lovely bastards, like and subscribe if you want to see more.